Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the From Contributor to Founder panel discussion. I'm sure my guests will join me shortly. Until then, all right, fantastic. I am joined today by a couple of really incredible people. We're just going to go around the room really quick and introduce ourselves. So can each of you please tell us who you are, what open source contributions you're involved in, and what's your business? Can we start with Carol, please?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Carol Willing, and I'm involved with Core Python and with Jupyter, Napari, and PyOpenSci, which you'll hear a little bit more about it. My business is a small consulting business that works on scientific Python development as well as open source governance and sustainability. And that helps me fund the work that I love to do in outreach and mentoring.
Can Deborah go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Deborah. I have not made that many open source contributions recently, but I have contributed to, I think, SciPy, Jupyter. I think those were probably the two main ones that I was involved in. And today I'm the CEO of Sparrow, which is a company that makes it simple for companies to provide their employees with leave, like parental leave, medical leave, caregiving leave. And we're about 250 people today.
It's pretty wonderful. Leah?
Hey everyone, I'm Leah Wasser. I am the executive director and founder of PyOpenSci. I am also an open source maintainer, both in Python and outside of Python. I love all things open source, but what I'm really passionate about is empowering people all over the world with technical skills that they need to work on software, to write code, to get jobs, and just to make sure that skills are accessible to everyone, everywhere.
Inessa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Inessa Pawson. I'm an active contributor to the scientific Python ecosystem. Primarily, I contribute to NumPy, and I serve on its steering council. I don't have a business. I am a contributor to a large organization. I'm open source program manager and the head of open source architect community at Open Teams. And we are on a mission to help organizations, big and small, break free from proprietary SaaS. And in my role, I focus on designing systems and programs that support public digital infrastructure and the people who maintain it.
Okay, fantastic. And hi, everyone, I'm Sheena. Most of my open source contributions that are well known are to do with organizing conferences and things like that. So I chaired PyCon Africa this year, and I help out in a bunch of different places and write some open education content from time to time. And my business is also education. So I run Prelude, I founded Prelude, and we do software development training and soft skills training for professional teams. Yeah, so that's everybody. So I want to start off with Leah. What first drew you into contributing, and then when did you realize that your contributions could shape something much larger, like a product or open PySci?
Yeah. So I've actually built 3 different programs. And so I think very early on, like maybe 12 or 13 years ago, when I had the first opportunity to build the program, the inspiration really came from seeing pain points in an ecosystem that I thought, wow, there's ways that we could actually address these. It just needs some structure and some program development around like those specific issues. And so I think that led to PyOpenSci, which is a very different type of infrastructure. It's community infrastructure, but seeing the pain points in scientific Python and thinking, what if we had something different that would support people rather than watching people struggle with technical challenges. And so it really all comes down to identifying a need and then having passion about addressing that need, and then creating the process and programs and structures that people can dive in and support, addressing that need together.
Sounds quite difficult, actually. Our keynote earlier on spoke a lot about how a lot of females just don't feel that confident stepping into a leadership role, and you seem to have just gone for it. What's your secret sauce? Was it hard?
I don't think there's a secret sauce. I appreciate it is absolutely hard. I think that just being incredibly passionate about whatever that pain point or that thing is that you're trying to address has really driven me. And also this really strong desire to not see other people struggle the way, say, I struggled when I was trying to get my PhD and learning how to code on my own, and not a lot of support and not a lot of women. It's a very male-dominated space. And so I think just having that passion, and I don't want to, mislead anyone. I still sometimes feel very much imposter and very much like I don't have the confidence. That is a daily struggle, but just pushing through that and letting my passion lead the work has helped a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
I would just double down on that a little bit. I'd say even when I started Sparrow, I didn't say I'm going to be a leader today. At no point did I wake up and say I'm going to be a leader. It was really, there was, in my case, it was, there was this 1 6-month period where 6 of my friends went out on some kind of leave. They all struggled with the paperwork, the process, the timing. They all spent hours figuring out paperwork and how they were going to get paid, instead of, just spending that time really focused on their family, their health, for whatever it was. And it seemed like a very solvable problem. And again, it was sort of solving the problem that got me through the first several years of being CEO. And, it's not really, so I guess I would just double down on what Leah said, in that it's not, certainly, if anyone in the audience does wake up and say, I want to be a leader, please go be a leader. But I'm not actually sure that many people do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember in the early days when Deborah, before she had even settled on what project to sort of pursue, the amount of time she put in researching different opportunities, and sort of settled in on this one that, if you think about it, was a brilliant idea. It leveraged the skill sets and the unique machine learning, deep learning expertise that she had. And she surrounded herself with people she trusted from the start. And to see her organization grow to 250 people, that is a lot of testament from the early days when she would write about each employee as they joined the company. There were some really nice, impactful things that you did in terms of deciding how much money companies would save by improving their structure. So I think whether we go into it thinking we're leaders or not, it's those little everyday actions we take that make us leaders.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Thank
yeah,
you,
that
Karen.
makes a lot of sense. And so,
Yeah,
you sort of go for it.
And I guess today, even today, I've been doing this for 7 or 8 years. The women tend to be good at these things. As much as I hate gender norms, actually caring about problems, doing something about problems, and helping groups work together in a functional way is actually something which I would say are all actually very stereotypically things that women are good at. So I think some of it is just the framing of how people think about it.
Yeah, and I'd love to add one, to kind of, again, dovetail on what Deborah was saying of, I didn't wake up thinking I wanted to be a leader. And maybe I think if I had done that, that would have been very intimidating for me personally. Whereas I woke up and said, I see this problem. I don't want other people to be challenged by the same problem. And as Deborah said, this is a fixable thing. We just need some process and structure. And in my case with PyOpenSci, it's really a thing that community can fix and that people can fix together. So how do you empower people around you to get involved and to make a difference? And people want to make a difference. I mean, that is a thing that resonates with a lot of people. And the leadership for me has come over time. You know, it's not something that I thought about actively. And again, I think that would be a lot more intimidating to just wake up and say, oh, I want to lead this thing. It's like, no, I want to fix this thing. Let's get some people together and let's do it together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like you start off with a problem, you start off with some passion, and then the leadership sort of happens organically in a way, and then you learn how to do it better instead of pursuing leadership as the first and primary goal. That's fantastic. Inessa, could you tell me a little bit about, so you run an open source program for your organization and deal with a lot of contributors. Can you think of some, so some of those contributors will eventually become founders and others won't. Sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit. What are some of the skills that people build during contribution that might come into play if they decide to found something?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I must kind of mention that before deciding to contribute my expertise within an organization, I was a founder of a consulting company for 15 years. And at some point, I decided that I don't want to be responsible for everything. And decided to take my expertise and focus on one corner of the garden, open source garden, that I thought needed some help. And this is how it happened to me, like my journey in open source. But to your question about how can somebody, a professional, can start contributing to open source and also become a founder, I think it all starts with identifying a need and filling that need. And I would say if we take it a little bit further to the topic of this panel, is that there's a notion of MVP, minimum viable product. But I think what I would suggest for somebody who is curious about being a founder is try to build something that people love, and try to build the minimal lovable product, and then see if there is a response from the community. Well, if it's lovable, then there is definitely. That's how you know it's lovable. And then support people who want to be part of your mission.
So it sounds like you had some challenges around. So you did found something and you worked at it for a while, but having to do everything was was unpleasant. Could you talk more about that?
Well, very few people in technology start out with, I want to start a company, I want to write code, but also I want to be responsible for taxes and payroll and hiring and sometimes letting people go. But that's what building business is like. Of course, you can keep it very small, being a solopreneur, but I guess I bought into this idea of scaling, and at some point it became all my life, and I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and was in my current role, I am bringing that knowledge to open source projects, community-driven projects that are loved by many, but under-resourced. And in my current role, I'm trying to solve this problem of building infrastructure around community-driven projects. So there are more people involved and help support projects that we love and rely on.
Can I, if you don't mind, if I just build on that? I think that there actually are a lot of really transferable skills between maintaining an open source project and founding a company. I'd say probably one of the biggest ones that I've noticed is sort of like definitionally, you are not paying people to contribute, which is usually a primary motivator. I mean, that's why people come to work and write code. So instead, you need to get to know them. You need to understand what motivates them. And you need to understand how they want to grow, what their skills are, and how that can fit into your code base, which I would say a lot of leaders that are company leaders that are used to being able to just motivate people by paying them a salary don't know how to do all of that. And if you do know how to do all of that, it definitely sets you apart and sets you ahead of a lot of other teams.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So my personal recent experience with chairing Python Africa, like I was working entirely with volunteers, and if you push a volunteer too hard, they'll go away. And if you don't hold people accountable, then that's also a problem. And so it's this delicate balance, this tightrope that you need to walk on. And if you take that experience into a business, it's helpful, because even if you pay somebody a salary, there is such a thing as quiet quitting. Even if there's a salary, you can't really make anyone do anything. You can insist very firmly, and you can ask them to leave, but that's not motivating. So being aware of like who the people are and what their skills are and the direction that they're growing in, that's really, really, really helpful. And yeah, so you can learn that from taking part in events, but also from leading software projects. So that's all fantastic.
But when I think of people who did this really well in my sort of early career, I actually think of Carol. I think Carol is great at really sort of like getting to know an ecosystem very, very well, both the contributors who are a part of it, as well as just the code
are and the direction that they're growing in. That's really, really, really helpful. And yeah, so you can learn that from taking part in events, but also from leading software projects. So that's all fantastic.
But when I think of people who did this really well in my sort of early career, I actually think of Carol. I think Carol is great at really sort of like getting to know an ecosystem very, very well, both the contributors who are a part of it, as well as just the code base.
Thank you. It's kind of interesting because I'm looking at this and I think most startups fail. And, open source projects don't create adoption and don't survive. But I think there's a couple key things that really set people up for success. One is the ability to listen and communicate. Another, because that is what is going to motivate, you're not, in most startups, you're not going to be paying top dollar. So that ability to motivate volunteers transfers very nicely to people who could be making more down the street at a FANG company. The other is the ability to do iterative development as opposed to waterfall development. It is super critical, not just getting product out the door, and Deborah could probably attest to this, but in that adaptation of your product to meet the market. Because I can tell you, one of the things we didn't do well in our startup was we didn't get enough customers, paying customers, early enough. And I think that is the place where, if you're coming from an open source world, being able to sell into, the value proposition and get people to pay you for it is critical to success. And I think Deborah, by putting a dollar amount to the value of time and resources that companies would save by using Sparrow's product set them up for better success over time. So,
the one thing
Go ahead.
I would add on that is you don't actually, for the first few customers, you don't actually need to charge the full amount that it's worth. I think there's just a huge psychological effect to, are you paying or are you not? If you're not paying, you don't, you don't value it as much.
Exactly.
Whereas if you are paying, then, I mean, you care at least that much, and are willing to put in that same amount of effort into making the partnership successful.
Mm-hmm.
And later you can figure out actually what the market value is. But I think also building on what Inessa said, like it is, what both Inessa and Carol said, is it is important to get something very, as minimal as you can possibly imagine out. Get people paying for that product, even if you think it's awful, and then start making it.
Embarrassed, it's okay. I think Leah, you wanted to add.
Yeah,
something.
I just wanted to add, and essentially it builds on what everyone has said, but the word, I like the minimal lovable product that Inessa used, but also that MVP and iterative development. I mean, coming back to Carol again, that's something Carol has taught me as well, is don't try not to be like thinking about those. If you are out there thinking about wanting to build something and it feels overwhelming, or wanting to start something, thinking about that, what could you do as a small stepping stone to get to that endpoint, rather than trying to do the whole thing the first time. And that's going to take a lot longer, be a lot harder, be a lot more overwhelming. And that was honestly something that Carol really instilled in me, because I tend to be more of a perfectionist type of person that wants things to be like really good. But you really need to get things out the door and test them and try some things and have this really experimental, like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to iterate, I'm going to improve it kind of agile workflow. And whether it's an open source project or it's a company or a nonprofit organization, which PyOpenSci, I'm learning, is really also a company. There's a lot of business there too. Try not to be overwhelmed by doing the whole thing. Try to be empowered by taking the first step and seeing what happens, and being open to something not working and just knowing you can iterate. And I think that that has really transformed the way I work, and is like the one thing, if anyone's watching this, to take away, like, you can start now and you can start small, and you're still starting in that trajectory.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that perfectionism can really, really get in the way, and scope creep is perfectionism's cousin sometimes, because you think you need all of the features right now, but sometimes it's better just to think about the shortest path to a single slice of your goal and say, get that little piece right. So how do we check this assumption? Checking assumptions. If you can do that and get paid for checking your assumptions, then that's gold. I have a question for Carol. Carol, you mentor a lot of people. That is your jam. So some contributors eventually become founders, and others go into different organizations. So if somebody was trying to make that decision about which pathway to take, how would you help? What advice would you give them to help them decide, or what questions would you ask?
So I probably wouldn't give them advice. I tend to lean into what I would call micro mentoring, which is, what you can do with small touches or small amounts of time with somebody. And the questions that I would ask would be often related to, what is the most pressing thing that you're trying to or wrestling with now? And then let's try and break it down into, different steps. And, I think, I'm turning 60 next year. Careers last a long time, take many different shapes and forms, everything from working at a startup and like age 25 and, being very successful there, to, taking a 15-year break because my mom had Alzheimer's and I was raising kids. And so, which is how the consulting came about in the first place. But I think, it's asking the questions that helps people reflect, because there's no guarantee that I can give somebody this is the path. What I can do is be encouraging and say, take your little step, see what you learn from that. It's sort of like when you're doing the scientific process and you're experimenting, anything you do, whether it's success or failure, gives you knowledge and information. And so use that information instead of getting stuck in, oh my gosh, I failed. Say, okay, I learned this. What can I do next? And I think it's that, what can I do next? That forward momentum really helps. And the paths kind of, one of my professors, I went back to her probably 2 decades after I had left school, and she's like, so what are you doing now? And I said, oh, I took kind of a convoluted path. And the first thing she said was, well, all the good ones do. And I think that's something really valuable, because I think I was like saying, okay, I didn't take the traditional path, but I think it's your path. And, I think that's what I try and instill with people that I help. But that's it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, nobody really has the answers. That's the real challenge. There isn't a recipe for stuff.
Well, and the economic situations and the technology profiles change over time. So what might have seemed like a good idea 5 years ago may no longer apply now.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah, it makes a lot of
I would
sense.
also add that as a founder, it's a great skill to have to deal with uncertainty, because this is something that absolutely certain. As a founder, you will face a lot of uncertainty, and most of your decisions will be made on about 70%, I think studies suggest, of information. So definitely should have in mind 2-3 steps ahead for your product, but also be prepared to make a change.
Yeah, I think that's good. Like something that was also mentioned, I think it was mentioned in the keynote. You either win or you learn. So if you do take the wrong step, and you stumble and your product doesn't work and people aren't keen on it, like look back. What did you learn? What can you try? What can you shift? So long as you're maintaining relationships along the way and not burning anyone, then that's pretty good. And then on making decisions, yeah, it's hard, but it's also important not to be too much of a perfectionist about the decisions you make, even because sometimes things are good enough. It's like, cool, if I go down this path, is it a one-way door? If I go down this path and it doesn't work, am I stuck going down that path, or can I change tracks? Sometimes you're stuck. Most of the time you can change tracks. So it's okay to make the wrong decision sometimes, because you'll still learn. So that's all really, really fantastic stuff. I think we've only got a minute left. And so I'm just going to ask if anybody's got something that they want to build on what we've already said.
I was just curious where Deborah, now that she's reached a certain level of success, who do you get your information or inspiration from?
I think it very similar to what you said, Carol. It's like the micro mentoring. There's no one has there are not that many people who have been down a similar path as I have anymore.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, I think there's this idea of, rather than having one mentor, you just sort of like learn what you can from the people you have in your life. I think that's what's been most effective for me.
Cool.
So you're the wisdom of the crowd, because if you gather the right people, then they'll help. Just their ideas will help.
It does really help to develop, and I would say another skill in addition to embracing uncertainty that really helps is to also develop some confidence in your sort of first principles thinking of just, do you believe that you can sort through the information to figure out what makes sense for you.
Yeah, I call that stubbornness.
I do have a lot of that, so I guess that works.
That's great. Fantastic. I think they're supposed to be over now, but I'm just going to keep talking until they shut us off. So let's see. So
I think so, let's just say goodbye.
Oh, okay, cool. So closing messages, fantastic. All right. So thank you everybody for taking part. It was lovely to meet you and meet you again. Do any of you have closing remarks? How can people learn more about you?
I just think PyLadies rock, and I think can do so much more than they originally think they can. So go and make the world a little bit better in your place, and
Fantastic.
that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, fantastic. And be courageous. Try something.
Yes.
Yeah, take the first step, even if it's a baby step. Just take it, and even if you don't feel fully confident, you've got this, and there's no failures. You're going to learn. Things might not work, and just go do it. And know that having people like this, like I've learned a lot from some of the people in this group that I know. Make friends, talk to people, get support.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I also encourage everyone to join PyLadies local chapter, and also just get to know people in your community. You share your knowledge. Don't be shy to share your knowledge, and also just if you see need, try to fill it, and that's the best way to learn and grow professionally.
Fantastic. And Deborah?
Ditto to everyone else. I don't have any more to say.